right, Jordan. You want to keep your eyes closed during this.
Thanks so much for doing this and taking the time.
Of
I
course.
kind of want to jump in by starting with, we'll talk about Chicago Med initially and this season.
Mhm.
And I think what seems like one of the fan favorite episodes, a very popular episode that is really focused on Dr. Archer that
That one?
just happened.
Yeah.
And I kind of, yeah, I kind of want to
Oh, I thought you were
get
talking about the acid episode.
Oh yeah, well that too. Yes. I, I guess there's a bunch to choose from. I kind of feel like it's been a big season or two for you though. And I'm kind of curious like if you want to start just sort of he's gone through a lot lately and it's hard to know what's coming next for him. So I'm
Mhm.
kind of curious as an actor and when you spend this much time with a character like this, how how it feels and if there's a certain amount of I guess a little stress maybe about just like the uncertainty too, because lots going on and anything can happen.
There's built-in uncertainty in being an actor in the industry. I've been incredibly lucky. I'm in my 43rd year of working professionally, and I've had a few gaps, but again, I put it down to luck and maybe some minimal ability, but the the um the uncertainty is always there. In
Yeah.
regards to being a character, even on a long running show, that uncertainty never goes away.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, in fact, I know I'll be back for next season. We're still waiting to hear if there's definitively if we're going to have a next season. It seems highly likely. Um, and what it, but the uncertainty aside, what being on this show for as long as I've been now, at the end of my 4th season, it's afforded me an opportunity to do the kind of deeper dive that I haven't been accustomed to doing. That other actors in other kinds of projects like films or theater can do more readily and regularly. So they've allowed me to do a deep dive into a character which I've grown very close to. I find a kinship with, and one that I think the writers have taken to heart, and that has gladly the audiences have warmed up to.
Yeah, I want to ask because look, for me personally, I love this character and I love characters like this.
Hmm.
He grounds me if I watch a show like this because he's grouchy, because he's darker, because he's not just he's honest, he's blunt. Like it's just fun to watch. It's funny, but it's
Hmm.
also human, and the things he goes through are so challenging, but I mean, and a lot of it's your work, but it must be fun to play, especially because everybody else has to play off him, right? Kind of
Yeah.
like he's like this kind of he's this piece that they all kind of have to deal with in a way, and
Hmm.
I imagine that's a lot of fun. Like
It
just
is a lot of fun. It's fun to play a character that has authority, which I don't have in real life. It's fun to play a character. I don't. It's fun to play a character that has great technical ability. Again, I don't possess that in real life. It's fun to play a character who inspires a little fear and discomfort in people. Don't have that, because my main thrust daily, and has been since I was, a preteen, was to get as many people to like me as possible. And Dean Archer doesn't have that problem. But it's also not just fun, but really fascinating and gratifying to play him because of the elements of the character that the writers have included. His past, his PTSD, his trauma, his inability to articulate his needs, and so they come out in a very kind of terse, brusque, unattractive way. Less so than in the beginning, uh, when we first were introduced to him, but still, he's flinty, and he can be, he can be trouble.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, bedside
yeah,
manner, like it's
is not
crazy.
great. But on the other hand, he's demonstrated numerous times that he can kind of jettison all that stuff and get to the heart of something when he's speaking with a child who's in distress, and there's been some great scenes with that. Or when cutting through the BS to parents who are fighting while their child, again, it's interesting,
That was a
is
great storyline because it made him heroic. It
right.
made his way of breaking rules heroic and doing
Yeah,
his own thing. And yeah, you touched on so many important things about why it works and also why I want to say there's a little bit for a lot of us who have to people please throughout our lives.
right.
It's like a fantasy to be a guy who can just kind of be like, I'm just gonna say it like it is. I don't fucking care, and I'm gonna do what I think is right, and everybody can just kind of deal with it.
Well, it's funny you say that. People please. I mean, I'm that guy too. And my dad, who I love, and who this character is close to in many ways, is I'm able to kind of embody aspects of him and then play him in a way that solves some of those problems that I had with him. And obviously, he's not with us anymore, so they will be, in perpetuity. I get to play this guy being heroic. I get to play him advocating for a young person in ways that I'm not sure my dad ever, maybe never had the opportunity to. But so I like playing it for that reason as much as people might subliminally or subconsciously like Dean Archer for when he does battles with those villains, or those villainous concepts. He comes through in a way that is, uncomfortable, and he's not a slick, square-jawed, handsome guy. He's
I
not Luke Mitchell.
Yeah,
He's somebody else.
I love when he both advocates for the kid, goes and finds the mom, tells the parents stop fighting.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about that episode. But in the same episode, he also tells the couple, he's like, "Don't do, just do this. Come on, don't be stupid."
Oh,
It's like
exactly. Yeah.
it's you talk about your father, and I think obviously fatherhood's a big part of the character.
Yeah.
The relationship to his son, the relationship
Yeah.
to his wife, but also maybe he's modeling something a little bit. Like, how does old school fatherhood adapt to the current day ideas of being a man? And he's dealing with that, right?
That you hit it on the head, and in a way the show doesn't it isn't as direct as your observation is, but that's exactly what he's doing. And with the help of Hannah, he's been able to make that transition. And it's funny, and maybe I'm digressing, but one of the issues I have of I'm 64 years old, being of these generations that didn't encounter the same sort of challenges that are being kind of put forth today. It's not that, for instance, a guy like me doesn't like what's happening. It's just that I need a moment to transition from an entire lifetime of viewing the world a different way. I just be patient. I want to learn the terms. I want to learn the pronouns. I'm with you. I just give me a second, because I'm going to step on my own feet and trip and all that stuff. That's kind of what he's doing in a way. And with her help, especially. And also, look, with the help of Sharon Goodwin and who he's found understanding. He's
Yeah.
found understanding in a group of people who are similarly confronted with a lot of challenges, who may not have had the darkest kind of background that he has, or they may have. It turns
Yeah.
out, like even Dr. Lennox. I mean, holy smokes! When we learn
Yeah.
her background, suddenly the fact
Right.
that she's such a frosty, dickhead,
Right.
very reminiscent of Archer, the way he used to be. But when we
Yes.
find out why, it's like, oh my God, And there's a
Yeah.
big lesson there. There's a huge.
It is.
It's aspirational for an audience to try to remember, like, oh yeah, everybody's stepped in shit. Everybody, even if we don't like him. Anyway.
What I love about what you're saying, but about the potential here, is this is a show everybody can see and watch. This isn't niche. This is a show out there for America, but also the world. And you're talking about what he deals with, what you deal with, what a lot of us of different ages deal with, is that, yeah, things have moved fast, expectations have changed. And like, how do you be a person of good intention that maybe doesn't always do the right thing the way it's supposed to be done?
Right. Right.
and also communicate like, yeah, I mean, he does want to be a good guy. He wants to be a good dad. He wants to be a good doctor, but he also like he's going to circumvent certain things because it's his style. He's like military and all that.
Yeah.
And I hope it's a lesson. I hope it's a lesson to people or a model of like you can, you know, it's okay to be mistakes and make mistakes and be imperfect. You know.
Well, I agree with you. One of the things that seemed to be happening, which was corrected by our showrunner Alan McDonald, was that after Dean Archer's initial introduction, where he was really off his rocker. I mean, he was doing some really, bad stuff. And they tried to steer him in a better direction. And they did do that. And then after a season or two where tears began to flow, then the next season had the character really kind of, softening up too much. I mean, it was not good for this guy. I think it's more appealing and actually more realistic if he retains a lot of those traits that the world, kind of flinches and winces at. But they actually worked for him. They worked for him to get him by, especially in that tough environment. He was in Fallujah. Now he's in Chicago. in an emergency department. So he kind of needs that. He's not a jocose kind of a dude. He needs to cut through the red tape and get to it. And he steps on people's feet. But
do you think
he's
it's in the connection, the Fallujah, there's a thing about psychologically. I don't know if as an actor, if you talk to writers or anybody about this, but that people leave those situations but need them. Kind of. There's like a phenomenon of like guys and girls who were overseas or whatever. They become like ENTs or something because they're like, I need that now. Like I live with that, urgency and emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it becomes the thing that you, even pain and dysfunction can be something that you identify with and find comfort in. And to a degree, I have to believe that, there's people who are neurodivergent or on the spectrum or who just have become kind of danger junkies, which, working behind a counter or bussing tables or working in an office will just not satisfy.
Yeah.
And
right. He's one of those.
he to a certain extent, look, he's also trying to find his way. Oh, and here's another funny thing. Maybe I'm digressing again. When they show him at home, I forget that he's a doctor in a metropolitan hospital. He makes a decent living. So when they show him at home, it's actually kind of a decent, cool, nice apartment, nice home. But in my mind, Dean lives in a crappy apartment, with a few pictures, maybe a couple of Navy things on the wall. And he eats, and he's a secret smoker. And he just, he's just a miserable kind of a bastard because that's what he knows. That's what actually gives him comfort. He's afraid to open up and embrace and love. And that may seem exaggerated, but again, this is something that the relationship with Hannah has kind of been important in the story, in kind of bringing him into the world more, without making him into kind of a weepy namby-pamby, which he should never be.
No, but I think that you explaining how he lives in your mind is visible in how he acts in his world. Because even though he's living in a nice house, it does feel like he's treating it like he's living in a one room with a mattress and maybe a TV.
That's how I feel that's how I feel he is.
There's
that's
nothing
how I feel
in there really. It's just kind of this like, it's nice, but he's not like, it doesn't feel like a home,
He goes to 3 places. He goes to, or like 4 places. It's his bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. That's it. That's all he cares about. The rest, he kind of maybe felt compelled or obligated to purchase, but he can't, it doesn't mean much to him.
Maybe he hired someone to dress it up.
I guess so. I mean, look, the art directors on the show are fantastic. The scenery and everything. They were great. It's just when I came to my character, I thought, nah, this is as Dr. Lennox said, he's cold, dead heart. He's like, he didn't give a shit about, He's not going to what was it? Not design for living, design without living.
Yeah.
He's not going there. He's not even going to Pottery Barn, man.
Right.
He sees something on the street. Oh, that's a nice rocking chair. He takes it, wipes it off, and uses it.
Yeah. No. I think one of the reasons I love the character, besides for all these things, is that I think you have a background in comedy. And I think even though there's nothing about he's not telling jokes, obviously, but I think it informs, at least it feels to me like it informs some of the straight man dynamic, some of there's just, I don't know how to articulate it. Maybe you do, but there's
I think I
something,
know.
and it's like it like brings another color to the canvas that like there's just something there, that like
Mhm.
a slightly sense of humor about what it is, or an honesty, you know what I'm talking about, sort of.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's not something that I encounter very much in the stories. Anything that gives itself to a comic moment, but there are moments that involve a certain kind of timing, which maybe have come out of whatever comedy experience I have. In the episode where I get accidentally dosed with LSD, two of the ravers, the guys, these amazing, great actors that were in this scene, when they slap an acid sticker on the back of my arm when I'm first examining one of them. That's a moment that I'm playing very straight, but because of what they're giving me, there's something in the comedic timing area that kicks in.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember that scene. Actually, I don't think they showed that scene. I actually saw it online. They cut it out, but then they released it. I don't know why they released it, but it's actually one of my favorite scenes
Oh,
where
wow.
they're saying hilarious things to me, and I'm just responding with arguably comic, you know,
Well,
you know,
that's awesome. Is
dismay.
it on? I have to put in the show notes somewhere where people can find it, so I'll figure
Sure,
that
it's
out.
on. I've seen it on Instagram, but it's a
Okay.
deleted scene from that episode. I can't remember the name of the episode.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that being, as you know, being even not telling the joke, being the straight man, is part of what makes really good comedy work. And I think
Mm,
in a lot of cases he's executing that function a little bit because he's so what he is.
right.
Obviously, putting him in a situation where he takes acid is comedy in a way, but like there's something when he's super honest with the couple about what they should do. There's just something funny, even though it's like brutal. And I
Yeah.
think that lightens the experience. And then when he comes out of the office and she yells at him, like it just is. It's just in the performance. Like it's not take yourself too seriously almost, but have a little leeway to be like able to play with the space, the comedy, the darkness, and it comes through because
Good.
sometimes these shows are too serious. They're too one way. There's too one note,
Yeah.
and this he
No,
brings something that like
very
varies
good.
us a little bit. I think that layers it. And
I'll
I
take your word. Thank you.
and I think I want to ask, going back a little bit to like talking about, you've done this for a while, you've had ups and downs, but Wings was a huge show, and that was another huge network show experience. And I'm kind of curious to hear a contrasting of just like that era of television, that era of the relationship to the audience, and what was available at the time, because it was really closer to, you turn on the TV, it's on at this time, that's when you watch it. There's only these things on. It's a
Yeah.
different world now,
Yeah.
and you've
Totally.
experienced them both in extreme, kind of.
Yes, I speak with my fellow actors Oliver Platt and Epatha Murkison, and we refer to those days as the before time, when when there was still appointment TV and people were more inclined to gather in a large kind of spread out collective at 8 p.m. To
Right.
watch Wings or Friends or whatever show. And I actually think that in the advent of recent technology, the loss of that experience is not a good. It's not a good thing. Yes, there are advantages to being able to binge White Lotus and The Pit, which is a great show. However, the communal kind of collective experience of everybody seeing a fantastic episode of a beloved show is lost, and I think that is registering in our society. It's creating a lot of compartmentalization and isolation in a way. Again,
Absolutely.
for convenience sake. One of the other changes is that I'm on one of the few extant network shows that look and sound and taste and feel like an old-timey 90s, 80s network show, but in the landscape I just described, and without a lot of the frills. I mean, a lot of the fat has been cut, and a lot of that fat is, again, the stuff that actors who were lucky enough to be on those shows really enjoyed. I mean, one of the crazy things that we used to get on Wings was, Nike would send us boxes, me and Tim Daly, of their newest sneakers, their newest shoes. I'm talking about a dozen to 15 to 20 pairs of crazy shoes that if I had today, if I had never said like, yeah, forget it, or thrown them away or given them back, I wouldn't have to work again. Each of those shoes would have fetched thousands of dollars, But
Yeah.
that's the upside. The other side is, again, the event that network television was, the upfronts, the ratings, the even the award seasons. It was a lot of fun, and again, it wasn't just for the industry, as nauseating as people might have found it. It still involved everybody. Everybody was on the same page, and that's lost in the the binging technology that we have.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's interesting. Again, I think it's been detrimental to the industry, certainly. Even though
Yeah,
there have been
like if
amazing shows.
you and I, like, when Cheers ends, when you say old timey and you talk about the 90s, I think, oh, I thought I was going to go farther back than that, but the 90s is old timey. But
It
like,
is.
it's hard to believe. But
Yeah.
when I think about like a Cheers finale, and I think about everybody showing up wherever they go the next day and
Yeah.
talking about it because they
That's
had
right.
to watch it, or a Seinfeld finale if you go a little
Yeah.
later. That's like the White Lotus finale. The extent of the conversation happens on, like, your phone,
Sure.
because not everybody watches it, and not everybody in the world saw it. So you are on the network show, but yeah, it's not the same communal, like, we all watched it, we all lived it.
No.
What did you think of the LSD thing?
I think that communal element that is being lost is going to end up being the thing that maybe metaphorically, kind of kills everything. No man is an island unto himself.
Yeah.
Similarly, these things create the illusion that we're connected, but we're not. We're cutting ourselves off from our fellow, and TV, for better or worse, was the opposite of that. It really did join us together in times that were wonderful and times that were tragic, and some of it was crap, and some of it, but still, the whole idea of community is a concept that technology is trying to approximate, but in the same time, it's decimating. It's so weird.
Yeah, it is.
I always feel like, oh, if Chicago Med were, again, in the olden days, the 90s or the 80s, selfishly, there would be a degree of attention given the show that it doesn't have. Now, that said, it's been number one in the ratings, and recently. And,
Yeah.
Dick Wolf does amazingly well. And that's because he does those kind of old timey formulas, which, God damn it, still work. There's still an audience out there that loves to show up for it, that shouldn't be neglected.
Absolutely. And I think it's about community, kind of, because to me, the comfort, what it is it's like, these are people gathering together and they're solving these problems every week together. Their problems on their insides, their problems on their outsides. And there's something very comforting and very powerful in that,
Yeah.
And you watch it once and you're like, it's I know these people, and I feel like these people, and they're going through this and solving it. And it does work,
Yeah. It's fun to be part of a big collective, a big unified brain, And I'm not talking about the artificial version of it. I'm talking about the kind of emotional and physiological version of it, which is inherent in, our species in a way. If we isolate, it's over, pal.
Yeah.
Pal. Look how I've taken you to my bosom. You're my pal now. My pal, George.
Just through this interview. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think about also with you talk about the experience and like the experience as a performer when you're out in the world or you're looking at other stuff to do or you're, wherever your career takes you, do you have like a preference of like, I'd love to do this, I'd like to do that? Because with this bingeable thing is this fragmentation of niche. So there's all kinds of little things that have their little audiences. So there's different kinds of possibilities. And so in that way, it's like for the talent, for the you, there's like a buffet almost. I mean, not like you can take whatever you want, but like like if you could, what are the things that you're like looking at that you're like,
well, it's funny. There's an assumption that we have the choice of where we're going and what we're doing, and we
Right.
just don't. And and with so much, as they say, content, with so many programs out there, and so many actors out there, it's not easy. Which is why if you end up on a show that's long running, that has a loyal fan base and is sane and well structured, and it pays you a wage, stay on it, sail it to the bottom of the sea. Just stay on it, because it's less stable out there than ever in a way.
yeah, that's a dying thing that exists.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So and the reason why I say that is because I know actors personally who've been on amazing streamers and really kind of critically acclaimed, gorgeous, cutting edge shows, who would kill to be on Chicago Med as a regular, who would
For
kill
sure.
to be on Dear Fire, or any of those shows, because there's a steadiness to them that is not available across the board. That said, I'd love to be in some cool show. I just binged, like I say, White Lotus or The Pit, or there's any number of great shows out there where they are arguably more adult and grittier, or they'll take, an actor and challenge them. The thing is that I've been doing it so long and have been so fortunate to be working as much as I have, that to mess with it, to say, you know what, forget it. I want to try something. It's a little dangerous. I've invested into my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
for
I
sure.
don't want to. But also, I understand. I recognize that I'm on the last chapters of my career and my life and all that stuff, and there's a lot of unknowns out there. So
Yeah,
whatever comes my way.
I'm kind of I want to ask you about you in your long career. You've collaborated with. You've been in a number of Stephen King properties, and I mean I know he's got a ton of them out there, but to do The Shining is really like an interesting thing for an actor because of the massiveness of that original movie and the performance.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing where, like, I mean, yeah, you have enough kind of color in your resume that you're like, yeah, I've tasted a lot of stuff, and trust me, where I am right now is pretty damn good. But like, what's that like? Like, I mean, what was that experience? And like, being a repeat Stephen King performer is kind of an interesting note to a career,
Yeah. Again, another odd stroke of luck. That particular show, The Shining, for those who don't know it, it was remade into a, I think, 2 or 3 night miniseries for ABC. And the reason why it was made was because the Stephen King faithful, including Stephen King himself, were, while very cognizant of the, of how powerful and arguably wonderful the Kubrick film was with Jack Nicholson, it was not faithful to the book. And Kubrick, however great he was, really deviate and bowdlerized a lot of the story. Famously, Stephen King didn't like that, but he wasn't allowed to talk to it until Kubrick died or whatever. And so he set about writing those perceived wrongs. And I think it succeeded on a lot of levels. Again, it was a TV version insofar that it wasn't, there was no nudity and gore, but there was a fantastic amount of fidelity to the book, and that meant there were plenty of scares provided by the great director Mick Garris and Rebecca De Mornay. And so, look, what we tried to do was, again, be faithful to the characters. I, either stupidly or brilliantly, just didn't even think of myself in Jack Nicholson's shoes. I just approached it as a character and didn't really give too much thought to it. Now, in retrospect, I wish I had given more thought to certain aspects of the role, because I didn't quite grasp. I mean, I did nominally, that really The Shining isn't about monsters in a scary house. It's about alcoholism, and now that I've lived some life, I think, oh God, fuck, I could go back and really kind of redo a bunch of those scenes, because I have an awareness of what that means now, not alcoholism per se, but just an understanding of addiction and bad behavior, and what that does to a person, and why it can be perceived as being monstrous. But that said, I think it was a job well done and worth viewing. People love it. I go to conventions and people are all over that show. They love The Shining, and Mick Garris's Shining and Stephen King's Shining can live in the same universe as Kubrick's Shining.
I think what you articulated too is that Stephen King wanted another version, and that was the mission statement, and that's so cool just on its own, that's what you guys were after. And it's reason alone for people to check it out, because it's like, well, there's this movie that there's Kubrick is Kubrick, he looms large, and like Nicholson,
absolutely,
but Stephen King too, and for him to say like, I kind of want to see my book as a story this way. And to be part of that is very cool. You touched on an interesting idea, which is that you learn things, of course, as you get older, and it changes how you act. And I wonder if, like, you say, like, I'm at the end, which, hopefully not, but like, looking at your life and the life the things you realize, like, it does deepen your ability to play different parts, right? Like, there's probably a lot of things you couldn't have possibly pulled off or understood,
Oh, absolutely. I always used to hear that, Romeo and Juliet, where the characters are 13 years old. There's no 13-year-old on earth who could ever play those characters. You need really the best age to play the characters would be somebody at least in their 30s, and so I realize now so many aspects of roles that I've been lucky enough to play, I could have played better. And also have a better understanding of myself as a person. And also I've learned technically what works better on film. And Chicago Med has afforded me an opportunity to do that, to really drill down on what it's like when the lens is this far away as opposed to here. There's something different that goes on. You still have to have the same truthful approach, hopefully, but there's technical things that I know now that I didn't know 35 years ago. I just didn't know. So, you learn a lot, and there's also big existential observations that I have now, and I could never have seen. I didn't have the apparatus to see it as a funny, cute, hilarious 28-year-old or whatever, just quipping all over the joint and getting lots of affirmation from being funny and cute and quippy.
But all of that, I think, like, it's what you bring to something like this now. It's like it's all layered in there, and that's part of what makes it work and fun. I'll wrap. I have to wrap, but I want to ask, kind of at the end, when you're working these Chicago shows, they're family. There's like a kind of a real camaraderie on them, I think. Yeah. Do you communicate with the rest of the team a lot about both kind of what you've learned in the craft, like to impart, but also just like, where are we going? Like, what's going to happen? The writers get to decide, but do you guys have your own kind of like communication about like our dynamics and our evolution and I'm curious for fans too, like, we know you guys are on camera together. We don't know who you guys are off camera together.
Mm-hmm. Well, when it comes to the show itself, I don't know how much there is input from the from the actors to the writers, especially from the actors who've been playing characters for so long, like Epatha and Marlene Barrett and Oliver, and that been on the show for a long time, and so it would be foolish to not avail themselves of the actors' perspectives, who are in various ways embodying these characters, that they know a lot about them. I know that Alan and Andy and Diane before him absolutely spoke to me about my feelings about Dean and my own history, having to do with my dad, who was a veteran, and aspects of his life, which were then kind of transposed into Dean's story, for which I'm grateful, and it's so interesting. I think that happens with the actors now and the writers, but by the same token, we can't kind of tell them where we'd like to go. I mean, I know where I'd like to go, where I'd like Dean to go, but he's not going to go there.
Are you willing to tell us where you'd like him to go?
No, I'm not going to say. But what I was going to say, before you rudely interrupted me and started laughing at me, was that where they are taking these characters is wonderful. It's better than where we wanted them to go, because the writers and Alan and all the writers in the room have a different perspective. They have the kind of the God perspective. They see the big picture. We're just, we're still living in our own heads. And, but we talk about it. I know, Jesse Schramm and I talk about it a lot. We talked about, where we thought, rather we articulated our thoughts about our characters and our relationship to Alan and Anna Dakoza, and it was and they listened to us, but writers write, actors act.
I give you credit for for being like, look, whatever I think should happen is not what should happen, probably, because I don't know that every actor thinks that way.
No,
I don't know at all. So I think that, or every human being, to see their place in the bigger picture, to be like, yeah, it's important that I have my role in my individual thing, but for this to work, like, I have to be on the team, because I do think a lot of people tend to think like, I think I know best what should happen now.
One of the cliches that actually does happen is, from time to time, not often, but from time to time, an actor will say, my character would never say that. And there's some validity to it, unless it's some crazy, blown out, psychotic, egocentric sociopath actor. They're out there. But when you're a grounded, down to earth actor like myself and everybody else in the cast of Chicago Med, Dean's not going to say, well, la-di-da. Not that he's ever been written to say la-di-da, but if they did, I would say, he's not a la-di-da guy. He's not Annie Hall. He's going to say, nah, or or I'll say jag off, that type of thing. He's that guy.
And I remember in the old days, what I used to hear people talk about is that directors come in and do parts of shows, and showrunners come in and out, and writers come in and out, but that the actors have to carry the torch a little bit to be like, hey, I know this guy pretty well. And I don't know if it's always still like that anymore, because like you mentioned shows like The White Lotus, where there's one person who's really consistently always, and there's different characters, of course. But in this, I don't know if it's still like that, where there's a certain expectation that's like, I have to kind of keep in mind where we started, where we've been, where we're going to go, because everybody else is moving around, a little bit.
There is that, but it's not done with impunity. Nobody kind of struts around and saying, I know what my character would say, and how dare you give me a direction. No, everybody's acutely aware of the machine that churns this out every week. And that's where the community and the family aspect of working on a TV show comes into play. The crew is way more important than any of these actors. It really is. And that's why I always stay to watch the credits at the end of a movie. I'll stay just out of, I can't read all of them, but at least I'm physicalizing the act of acknowledging all the people without whom none of this would be happening. So everybody is very aware that they've got to work together, and there's a degree of personal protection, but also willingness to figure out how to get this episode made week to week.
Yeah. Well, I want to end on that because I love that, staying in the audience. I know other people who do that too for the same reason.
Sure.
It's a good practice, and I appreciate you taking the
practice.
time. This was really fun. I
Sure,
would do
man.
it more
Fun.
if we could.
Thanks so much.